You're listening to Dish It Up, a monthly podcast serving up the latest news, trends, and events relating to the San Diego food scene. This podcast is recorded as a collaboration between Pacific Magazine and Eating and Drinking San Diego at the Specialty Produce Studios.
This is Edwin Real. I'm with my guest today. His name is Danilo DJ Tangalin. He's a Filipino like me, and he is opening up a new restaurant over in North Park. It's called Beaver Whack Cider Works. DJ.
How you doing?
How are you?
Doing great. Already had a full day today. Stopped by a few friends, said hi, ate around town, so that was fun.
You doing research around town, or are you just eating your way through because you don't really have a restaurant until, what, a couple of weeks?
Pretty soon. According to our schedule that, we've been working on the last couple of weeks, we should have at least some type of soft opening or mock service by November 12th.
November 12th, right in time for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you get into food?
Probably had no choice because I was born into the food industry. My mom, when she was growing up, her family owned a bunch of fish farms in Iloilo in the Philippines. That's a little bit like south, but not too south. So it's in like Visayan region. And then when she moved to the city where my dad grew up, she opened a little cantina where I helped her kind of run the business. And she was also involved in the, we call it wet market. So there's like the dry market, which is a lot of grocery. Wet market is where you get like fresh fish, fresh meat. And so my mom had a stall there. So I helped her to learn how to butcher fish very early. And on top of that, we were doing our own lunch delivery service.
And when did you immigrate to America, and where did you settle first?
Yeah, so my dad actually moved to the States first back in 97, and we followed as soon as he got the right paperwork to kind of get us here. And so we stayed in Hawaii for 3 years in the island of Oahu. We stayed in Aiea, Eva Beach, and Hawaii Kai, and then spent 3 years there, and then we moved to New Jersey. So Hawaii to New Jersey, different.
Poor thing.
Yeah, and then so my family kind of settled in Jersey. Ended up going to culinary school in Jersey, and then traveled after that.
Where'd you travel to?
A little bit everywhere. So I worked in Jersey, a restaurant called Jay's on 3rd. It's a small little restaurant, 60-seater, but really, really good food. The chef that I work with, which I consider my first mentor, his name is Jason Hippen. He worked under Morimoto, William Bradley at Addison, Staj at Maria in New York, 2 Michelin star. After working for him, I started as a line cook, kind of climbed the ladder, ended up being his chef de cuisine. And after 4 years, it was me and him decided it was time for me to learn new things and learn under different chefs. So I moved to Philadelphia because that was the closest big city in where I lived in Jersey, in Cape May, New Jersey. Luckily ended up at the Ritz-Carlton to work for an Eric Repair concept restaurant called 10 Arts. And I worked under a chef named Jennifer Carroll, who was in Top Chef.
What style of cuisine do you prefer?
For me, from traveling across the country, learning from different chefs, what I learned is kind of putting everything together. My roots is Filipino, but, my first chef was Thai, and we were both classically French trained. And, gathering different techniques, learning here in San Diego about Mexican cuisine. And, when I was up north in San Francisco, learned some more really refined cuisine. So I would say it's just a combination of everything. It's all about seasonality and partnering it with classic techniques and doing modern platings.
Do you believe that Filipino cuisine is the next big thing?
I think the next big thing is what everybody's dubbing it, but I felt like Filipino cuisine has always been there. It just needed to be in the spotlight a little bit more. But once, Anthony Bourdain talks about it, April Bloomfield talks about it, Andrew Zimmerman talks about it, now that the last year or so everyone's talking about it, Philippine cuisine has always been there. It's been there for hundreds of years. It's on the spotlight now. So it's up to us chefs that, really embrace the cuisine to, kind of keep pushing it forward.
So Japanese cuisine had their thing in the 70s and 80s. Thai, Korean had it in the 90s and 2000s. What's going to push Filipino cuisine forward in your eyes?
I think it's consistency. went to a dinner hosted by Anthony Sensei at J6, and he partnered up with 3 chefs that was recipient of Chef Celebration, and it's this young chefs. There's a lot of up and coming Filipino chefs, and there's chefs like me and Anthony and Evan and Christiane and Craig Jimenez that's always been pushing it a little bit at a time. When I had a chance to run a full menu, Filipino influence at Title, I felt like people really embraced it, and I was serving 200 to 300 people every night, Filipino food, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. So I think it's consistency and the way you present it. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of Filipino chefs that kind of failed a little bit of doing Filipino food because they went 100% all in. When they build their menu, they write it in Tagalog, and then they didn't really describe what it is. And it was kind of turned off on a lot of people. And I kind of learned from that and presented it in a way where it's palatable and it's easy to read. I think that's one of the keys. Like when you write a menu that's like a foreign, cuisine, you have to make sure that people understand what it is and know where it's coming from.
And when you talk about presentation, how do you present Filipino food? Because a lot of times we know, being Filipino, we go to Filipino restaurants that are traditional. It's all these turo-turo joints that are just steam table, cafeteria style. Point is what they call it.
Yep.
So how do we take that leap from being a turo-turo joint to being acceptable in the mainstream?
Well, I think, people eat with their eyes, and what I learned, when I worked all over the country, it's about finesse. It's just a little bit of finesse. I don't really focus too much on presentation. Like presentation is the last thing on my mind when I'm building a new dish. But when I finally conceptualize a dish, all the flavors work together. It's seasonal, it's sustainable. And then you think about presentation. Like I said, people eat with their eyes. And, there's a lot of modern technique out there. I don't really focus on that too much. But it's just finesse. It looks good, it smells good, and people can appreciate it as soon as it hits the table. It makes them want it more.
Does that elevation of presentation, will that eventually alienate our people?
I don't think so. I mean, as long as it comes from the heart, that's what I learned from putting together a couple of Filipino dinners already. They support it. There's a lot of old school people that really doesn't care about the presentation. But if you have a story behind it and you know where it's coming from the heart and, you tell them about how you learn how to cook, you learn from your grandma or your mother, and people will respect that. People will respect that it's coming from a good place, and it just depends. If some people don't accept it, then we'll be stuck. That's why I think presentation is somewhat important, but it's not really the main thing that will push Filipino cuisine. It's all about still being consistent about it and presenting it in a more education kind of way.
When you were having these Filipino dishes at Title, what did people gravitate to?
People gravitate to what they think is familiar. So, for example, there's a Filipino dish called kare-kare, which is a braised oxtail stewed in peanut sauce with, bok choy and eggplant and Chinese long beans. And instead of oxtail, because people might be like, I've never really had oxtail, I'm kind of intimidated by it. So I just substitute the protein to short ribs.
Perfect.
That's not a big leap, but it's still short ribs kare-kare. And people are like, okay, I know what short ribs is, and I'm going to give it a try because it's short ribs, There's another dish that I did, bulalo. Bulalo is like a soup. It's a broth made out of bone marrow, and people, even Americans or even expert diners are still somewhat intimidated by bone marrow. So I presented it in a way where people recognize it as comfort food. So I did a style of bulalo French onion soup.
Nice.
Yeah. So I took the idea of a bulalo, introduced it, presented it in a French onion soup way, and people gravitate towards that. So if they can recognize it, play around with it, modernize old Filipino techniques, I think that's what, people gravitate to.
Do your relatives eat at your restaurant and order those things, or do they go traditional and eat something off the regular menu?
I don't have relatives here in San Diego. It's just we moved here because my wife's brother used to live here. Then he was in the Navy. So my wife's family is on this side, but my family's on the East Coast. But every time there's Filipinos that come over, when I was at Title, it would always be their favorites. I have a version of adobo, I had a version of sinigang, and they would order it. their main complaint is, why doesn't everything come with the rice?
Right?
And I'm explaining, it's like, I can't serve everything with the rice, and that's the funny part. But they love it, because it's modern. When you say sinigang, it could be the pork ribs, and some people do, with the milkfish, which is Philippine national fish. But I do it with local seafood. We had mussels, clams, Mexican white shrimp, and stuff like that.
When you introduce a Filipino dish, why do you select certain dishes? Why do you, you've said some classics, but also like, what makes you think that, okay, I'm going to create this dish, I'm going to put it on the menu, and we're going to hope it sells. But why did you select the dishes you did?
For me, it always starts with, when I'm building a dish, it always starts with what's in season. After you come with seasonality, what flavors would go with this one? After the flavor combination, then you think about technique. So, for example, there was a dish that's like, when it was created, it was built from like leftover fish. What they did is, if you have a leftover fish at nighttime, in the morning, you cook some scrambled eggs, you put some broth, put some vegetables, and you pour it over the fish. And I did a play on that because I have a little bit of Italian background, and I turned it into a pasta dish. So I start with an idea, and then what's seasonal, and then what flavors go with it, and then techniques, and then the presentation would be last.
Speaking of seasonal, your new restaurant is going to be seasonal. You're calling it in the moment food.
Yeah.
I like that over something called Farmtotable because, in my opinion, Farmtotable is kind of played out.
Yeah.
Because anyone can be, anybody can be Farmtotable, but in the moment takes a chef-driven concept and explores it even further locally and also seasonally. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, people always just, ask me what kind of food I cook, and I said in the moment, and people are like, what does that mean? It's just what's in the moment. I don't just say seasonal or farm to table. For example, what we're doing at Beaver Whack Cider Works, it's one of the first and unique cider tap room in San Diego, and I'll be working very closely with our cider makers. And for them, exploring different flavor combination, seasonality. We know it's apple based, but the flavors that will go with apples. It could be anything. We have hop cider coming up. We have pineapple and black Hawaiian sea salt coming up. And so I have to build my dishes according to what they're building. We're building a brand. Beaver Whack is a brand. It's a cider tap house with a full restaurant service. And, what we're doing is very unique. So in able to be consistent with what we're trying to send, our message, which is, cider that we're doing are very unique and very seasonal. That's the food has to match with that.
Where is it in North Park?
It's 30th and Lincoln. It's geographically the landmarks that you'll notice like around us are Coin Ops, Tornado, Streetcar, and we're across the street from Crazy Burger.
Nice. It's right in the heart.
It's prime location.
How are people going to accept the first cidery in North Park?
So I think it has to do with a lot of education. When my owners and our cider makers first came up with the idea of putting a cider tap room, they explored doing a brewery, and there's already a ton of brewery, and one of our owners, spent some time in Europe, and 25% of alcohol sales in Europe are cider, and in the U.S. it's 1%. So that's a market that no one dares to go or hasn't really explored it until you have the right people to put it together, and one of our owners has been home brewing since he was a teenager, and he worked closely with, Mike Hess and learned from him. And then we have another cider maker who's spent about 12 years in the wine business. So cider is somewhere in between making wine and brewing beer and educating people on the history of cider. There's a lot of styles of cider. There's Scandinavian style cider. There's Spanish style Cidre. There's the English style, which is a little more drier. And, we're doing from sweet to dry to bubbly to barrel age. We're doing a lot of special releases. So we've been training the last couple of weeks about educating our staff, and our staff has been really, really good about taking in the knowledge of cider, because that's first thing that people are going to ask, how do you make cider? I had a guy who installed our soap. He was like, what's cider? So even here, 1% sale, like in the beverage liquor department in our country, 1% is, it's an untapped market. And we're taken this chance to, put cider on the map.
What's going to differentiate your place from places like Utopia Cider, Julian Hard Cider? There's a few now in San Diego. What's going to make you guys different?
I think it's just a combination of everything. A lot of people, all those cider places you mentioned, I think ours, with our techniques and our facility, I think our tap house is going to look outstanding. It's built by Cultivate and Texture. It has so many little things that every time you turn around, you're like, ooh, that's something new. Ooh, that's something new. So, it's just the flavors, the brains behind, our cider makers, the food, the decor. But, we focus a lot the last couple of weeks on service. It is it's tavern style, tap room, but service, it's going to elevate it. For me, it comes down to three things: ambiance, service, and then food and beverage. So I think our ambiance is going to look great. Our service is going to top notch, and we're going to work really hard to make sure our cider and our food, delivers.
That's Marco Pierre White right there.
There you go.
Let's talk about North Park. Why did they decide on North Park?
Well, when they were getting into the project and looking at different locations, I think it just made sense. I know that there was one location that's not in North Park that they would have been able to build a cider tap room, but it wouldn't fit on like the food that they were trying to think. They want to captivate an audience that just not going to go to cider. Because it's really hard, when you say only 1% of our, market drinks cider, it's hard to like just get them into the tap room. There has to be something that will attract them besides the cider, and which is the food. So when they were looking at location, they were looking at location where they can build a restaurant and people will embrace the restaurant and the cider at the same time, and it'll attract more audience than they would hope so.
Who's your cider maker?
His name is Matt Austin and Preston, and then our other owner is Lara Worm.
I'm guessing you have spent recently a lot of time in North Park.
Yeah, I've been hanging out there. I think North Park is one of my not last, but the only part of town that I haven't really cooked at. I moved to San Diego about 6 years ago, spent a lot of time cooking very close to the beach and oceanfront views, and never really cooked in like North Park, South Park, kind of Hillcrest area. So this is my first time cooking there, and I felt like my food, will be accepted and people are going to be enjoying it.
Where have you eaten in North Park?
Ooh, North Park. I haven't tried. Well, Madison is one of the places that I want to try. I've done One Door North. I did Underbelly. There's a couple more. I've been to Cardamom. I'm trying to think what else on top of my mind. But there's a lot of places that I want to visit, and I definitely want to check out Madison and what they're doing. I felt like they're kind of not too similar, but with the same concept of what we're doing.
When you got to San Diego, you said you worked at the beach. I'm guessing it was Pacific Beach, right?
Yeah, Pacific Beach. And I spent my first 3 years in San Diego working for Whisk and Ladle Hospitality. So I was at Whisk and Ladle for a year and a half. And then they moved me to Prep Kitchen Little Italy.
Oh, I love Prep Kitchen.
Yeah.
Then what was your next gig after that?
Jordan.
Okay. Tell us about Jordan.
Jordan was awesome, man. That was my first executive chef job. So it was definitely the one that I felt like turned my career around here in San Diego. Whisk and Ladle was a great, great company. I love them till now. Chef Ryan Johnston, I consider him my second mentor. He taught me so much about, food and, really respecting classic dishes. And, like one of the biggest things that I learned from that company was what you put in the pot is what you get out of the pot. And I took everything I learned there, and I started at Jordan. I started as a sous and ended up being an executive chef. And it's a great concept. They're actually going through a renovation right now. And, at Jordan, I get to control a big staff, the biggest staff I've ever had to manage, which is about close to between 30 to 40 cooks, which is a lot, having that staff and, the business volume that we were doing, breakfast, lunch, dinner, banquet, room service. So it was a lot of combination of like everything I learned from the Ritz-Carlton to Whisk and Ladle from Jason Third, kind of put it together and use that to be able to run a big restaurant like Jordan.
And then from Jordan, you went over to Decoy in San Marcos, Lake San Marcos.
Yeah, it was the same company.
Same owners, right?
So I was the exec chef of Jordan, and then became the corporate chef, and Decoy was one of my projects to open.
What happened there?
Well, Decoy, it was a beautiful, beautiful building. The concept just didn't work. We're trying to attract people from San Diego to go up in San Marcos, and it's just, like you said, like Filipino cuisine, it was just timing. It wasn't time for that concept to work up north. Maybe in a year or so, maybe 2 or 3 more years, maybe San Marcos will be able to catch up. I mean, Oceanside is the hottest, food scene right now. Like, they're ready for whatever you throw at them, San Marcos is just not ready for it.
From Decoy, you went over to Tidal.
Tidal, yeah.
Tell us about that time.
Yeah, so Amy DiBiase, one of the great chefs in San Diego, hit me up and said that, she was moving on and she wanted me to apply for that position, and I did. Met with the GM and, did a tasting for them. It's such a unique property. It's been there for like 50 years, 50 plus years. Some of the workers there have been there since they were like 16 years old. And the theme for me, like, it's the location, like by the water, palm trees everywhere. And the first thing that like really like came to my mind was like Filipino cuisine. It's the location, the ambiance. And I think that's one of the reasons why what I did there worked. As soon as I got there and people start hearing about like what we were doing. And like I said, we were feeding 200 to 300 people every night and eating Filipino food. And it was such a great platform for me to kind of get out of my shell of doing everybody else's food. Then I started doing my style of food, which is modern Filipino.
So 2 of your last 3 jobs were at resorts or hotels. Mm-hmm. What makes that different from working at a standalone or, a single location restaurant?
So many things. I mean, at Tidal, we had a purchasing director. So everything we have to purchase has to go through the purchasing director. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. When you're trying to buy fresh from the market and you have to get out of the resort and, buy stuff, paying cash to the farmers because, they don't really have, some of them have receipts, some of them just write it on a piece of paper. Those are the things that are not really, not efficient, but not protocol for like resort areas. So that was kind of hard. And some of the things that, they want you to do, like mandating you to buy from certain companies, like you have to buy at least 80-90% of your products from the place that they want you to buy from, and sometimes that hinders creativity. Sometimes you just have to compromise on what they want, but compromise on your integrity and, not knowing where your food's coming from. But I mean, you take everything, you learn from it. And, with big resorts like that, sometimes you don't even know who the real owners are because there's just so many. It's like combining hotels with other properties and stuff like that. But Jordan was awesome. I knew the owner, I knew the VP, and, from standalone, like Whisk and Ladle, knowing the owners, they go there for lunch, going to their Halloween party at their house. Like, those are the differences. It's more like a family, and it's, when you know who you're working for, that makes it a lot different.
When you decided to go back to a standalone owner establishment joint, what made you decide to go back to that?
Yeah, I mean, when I left Tidal, there was definitely a lot of options. You know that resorts pay better than most standalones because they have the resources, and that you can get certain items, certain equipment, certain exposure from bigger places because they have, bigger PR firms and stuff like that. But when you go down, like when I decided to work with Beaver Whack, it was almost going back to my first restaurants in Jersey, where it was the owner was the chef, the GM was the wife. You know what I mean? So working with family-owned business, and I talked to them and heard everything they said. Listened closely to what their vision is, and that's for me. Like, that's the biggest thing. I believed in the vision. Starting something from scratch, and this is my owner's first venture. To be part of that, I think is special. We all want to belong to someone's. Be part of something special. And I think that's what attracted me the most. It wasn't even, we never discussed like, can I do Filipino food? That wasn't really the discussion. The discussion is, can you make good food and people are going to love it? And, we were like, okay, that's what we're going to do,
You've been in San Diego for 6 years now?
Yes.
What do you love about San Diego?
I mean, I like the fact that I believe that, I'm part of a bigger thing, which is pushing the culinary scene forward in San Diego. I think when I was doing my travels, I only meant to stay in San Diego for 1 year. And then life happens. When I was at Whisk and Ladle, after a year at Whisk and Ladle, I was ready to move on and go back. It wasn't about the company. It wasn't about San Diego. I was just ready to move on to the next city. I was going to go to Austin next. And after that, I was going to go to New Orleans. And I had it all mapped up. I was going to go to Charleston after that, and then finally go back to like Jersey with the family. And, I was a sous at Whisk. And after a year and a half, they were like, we want to make you the chef de cuisine. I was like, wow, I can't really turn that opportunity down. And after Prep Kitchen Little Italy, I had my first daughter. And it was kind of harder to move with, my daughter being born. And after that, I became an exec chef at Jordan. And, that's an opportunity that I couldn't pass. And next thing you know, I have my son. I had 2 kids. And, besides the weather, it's the community. I've made a lot of friends, met a lot of people, and knowing where everyone's focus is on the direction of the food industry in San Diego it's an awesome feeling to be a part of. To be mentioned with, Davin or, other great chefs of like
David
pushing,
White.
yeah, of like pushing culinary, and that's great because a lot of people look at San Diego as a, second class food city.
Of course.
And that's our job as chefs. It's nobody else's job to push our cuisine all together, not just Filipino cuisine, but like San Diego, because it almost doesn't have a true identity when it comes to food,
How do we change that?
Like I said, being consistent and always pushing it forward. I'm not talking about like making everything molecular gastronomy. I'm talking about like consistency, the sustainability, staying current with food trends. And it's not all about giving people what they want. It's a give and take. If all the chefs cook what people want, we'll have 10,000 taco joints. That's what people want in San Diego.
And?
You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with it, but it wouldn't get us to the point of like Chicago or San Francisco or LA or New York or Seattle or Portland or Austin or Pittsburgh. It's compromised. And I think diners, look at the rise of pop-ups in San Diego. It's working. Some people don't even have restaurants anymore. They just run pop-ups.
What are your favorite pop-ups in town?
I like what, Steve Brown was doing, the cosecha. I think what he's doing is new to San Diego, and that guy is just a nonstop machine. He knows what he wants, and he's not stopping until he gets it, and sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. But at least he believes in what he was trying to do, and he's staying behind what he's doing, which is the Wagyu, Satsuma, Never been to Cow by Bear, but I mean, I don't really know the concept, but I know it's Cow by Bear. But I've heard that there's like different chefs who's doing it, never really been part of it. But, that's something that someday I want to try whoever's food it is. Have you ever been?
I've never been, but
yeah. Have you heard like
I
what
know,
they do?
I believe I know who it is.
Yeah.
There's a group of them, so
yeah.
I believe I know who it is.
Yeah.
But we won't say that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody told me it's not just one person. They pass it along to whoever's next and available.
Whoever's off.
Yeah, whoever's off.
It's funny you mentioned Steve Brown. We went to the friends and family when they opened up Temp.
Yeah.
And my buddy who I went with, he said, oh, this is probably the best French bistro. And they don't even try to be a French bistro.
Yeah.
They're not saying they're a French bistro. And, Steve Brown's got a reputation around town of being a good chef. And I didn't want to believe the hype. And, man, I tried his food and it was delectable.
Yeah. I mean, he trained, under a lot of people. And he's self-taught. And like I said, he believed in techniques. I think his food, we've done a few dinners together. And he believes in techniques, he believes in seasonality, getting, the best product available. When I worked at, I did a stage at La Bernardine, and you can see it's like different cuisines, different techniques, the fish is from all over the world. But his philosophy is like, if you get the best products and do the best technique for it, then it'll always work. There's nothing really magic behind it. You get the best fish, cook it the best way possible. It's going to turn out to be a great dish.
What do you like to cook with in San Diego? What are some of your favorite ingredients, your favorite proteins? What do you like cooking with in San Diego? Coming out of the county.
I've always been a fish guy, so any fish that comes out of tuna dockside, or I work a lot with Pacific shellfish. Their standards are really, really high when it comes to picking good products. I do fish a lot, so just quick pan-seared fish, or if it's a nice buttery fish, I steam it, pair it up with any seasonal vegetables there is. If it grows together, it'll probably taste good together. If it's butternut squash, pair it with some fall mushrooms and pomegranate, put some cheese, it's gonna be good. So seasonality, that's one thing, and things that grow together will always taste together. So even when you look at some of the dishes or the fish's diet, if the fish eats crab, and you pair it with some type of crab and put a technique behind it, like do a crab soup with a seared fish dish, it's probably gonna taste good together.
It's Friday night, and we're off service.
Yeah.
Service has ended. We're ready to go out. Where do we go eat?
I do a lot of convoy. Minsokchon, Tajima, Soho. So I eat a lot of ramen. Way too much that my wife's like, every time I want to go out, she's like, as long as it's not ramen, I'm coming.
Well, see, the other part of that is a lot of those joints are open late for restaurant employees and service industry employees. So
they know the secret.
Yeah.
They're like,
we'll open until 3.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, that's like $2-3 grand. That's like, market.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's at least a handful of cooks that wants to eat at night, and they capture that audience. It's about thinking about who's your audience and who can come in your restaurant at that late at night.
Where are we eating brunch tomorrow?
I usually go to anywhere that has a view. So anywhere somewhere I go to Pacific Beach or Mission Beach. I ate at Catamaran the other day for the first time, and I was like, that's a great place to eat, because it has just the view, people running, and you're just eating down your egg Benedict, and you get just girls running bikinis. I was like, that's money.
That's San Diego for you.
That's San Diego, People care about taco, party, and fitness in San Diego.
Fitting this whole taco in my mouth. Speaking of Mexican food, let's talk about your introduction to Mexican food. What do you eat locally? What as far as Mexican food is concerned?
So for the first 5 years I was in San Diego, I didn't have my passport. I've been eligible to get a passport forever, and the only reason why I got my passport because a group of chefs and industry people were planning to eat at Noma in Tulum, Mexico.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta go be a part of this, and so I got my passport and I was able to go. And ever since then, I've been going to TJ a lot and just eating there. I was at Oryx for Chef Rupo Ibarra's restaurant. That was very, very impressive for what they're doing over there. And I've been to Valle, check out a few wineries that I can't think of the name because some of them I can't even pronounce. Went to Ensenada. Yeah, and people are giving me proper tours on TJ the last few months. But in here, I don't think I have a solid favorite. I did the somebody put up the top 10 best taco places, and when we were doing R&D with the GM of Jordan, we did the top 5 out of the top 10, and there's one that's really good. It's in by Chula Vista. It was a food truck. I forgot what the name is, but they're
Galito?
I don't know.
Is it a torta truck?
No, it's not a torta truck. It's like a taco. Yeah. But that was really good. And then we went to Oscar's by Bird Rock area.
Yeah.
That was good. That's the best 99 cents I'll spend. Is a fried fish taco for 99 cents. That was really good. And there was a couple more that because we were trying to do R&D, because, I'm not going to claim I'm the best. I know the cuisine. So we had to do R&D when we were trying to put together a new lunch menu, which has a little more Mexican theme. And that was a fun times.
When you went to Tulum, who did you go down there with? What chefs?
I went with Aron Obregon. I went with Hannes. I went with Letty. I went with Carla Navarro and Franz from Chef's Roll.
And did you visit with local chef Drew Bent?
Yeah, I did. I saw him working.
Yeah.
I saw him working. Andrew was there. I saw Philip Esteban was there. And then a couple more. I saw the people from Cutwater Spirits. So the week that we went there was the week that a lot of San Diegans went there to check it out. But that was a great experience. It was super expensive, but it was definitely a once in a lifetime event, because we were there for almost 6 days, and we probably ate at between 5 to 7 places every day.
What did you learn about your time in Tulum?
Ingredients.
Yeah.
Ingredients. I think, a lot of people didn't know that Rene Redzepi has been going to that area, Yucatan, Tulum area, for like the last 20 years. So he didn't just like go to Tulum and decided to do a pop-up there. He's been going there forever, and he knows the ingredients. He knows a lot of people there, and, a lot of people, there was like, not more so like some people like it, some people don't. It's all about like understanding what he was trying to do over there. And what he was trying to do is highlight ingredients and doing the techniques that they know would work with those ingredients. He wasn't pretending he was going to do Mexican food. He said he was going to use Mexican ingredients and prepare it the way that they want to prepare it. So there was a lot of dishes that was really mind-blowing, and there was dishes where like, I get it. It wasn't the best dish, but I get it. There was one dish where I think the fan favorite for a lot of people that went there was the banana ceviche. And then it was like banana ceviche, ants, and like chili oil. It was super simple, but it was like when you ate it, you're like mind blown.
All the vegans in the audience are kind of tripping out.
Yeah.
Of ants.
Yeah. There was a lot. He had a dish where it's just foraged flowers. And you're like, okay. It was just literally like 15 different flowers. And they paired it with like a lime granita. And that was awesome.
We were talking earlier off mic about how this is your 5th podcast that you've done.
Yeah.
What's the worst question you've been asked?
I don't know the worst
one.
This one asking me what the word. I don't think I remember a worse question. It was just, no matter like how many podcasts you do, some of the people who's listening or who will listen to this probably don't know who I am, and trying to learn more about, the chef that they follow or the chef that they saw, on this, featured thing somewhere on the internet. But yeah, I mean, it's just getting to know people and spreading the word about whatever project you're doing and what you think. I think for me, cooking is a philosophy. It doesn't have to do with anything else but a philosophy. If you believe in something, you believe in sustainability, that's cooking. If you believe in seasonality, that's for me is cooking. So it doesn't to do with, anything else but philosophy. And that's what I learned from one of, the stages I did was, me and the chef sat down and he was just like explaining to me his, thought process of running a restaurant. It's not like sports and X and O's and stuff like that. It's not about training manuals. It's not about, following cookbook recipes. Nothing to do with that. It's just philosophy. If you believe in running your kitchen a certain way, and for you think that's efficient and effective, or whatever it is, if the people that you hire thinks that that's what they believe in too, and like that's right off the bat, it's what you believe in, it's what you share, and even home cooks, if they believe that certain things are the way that it should be, then that's what it is. It's just philosophy.
In 6 years that you've been here, you've worked with probably hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. Who have you mentored and where are they now? My greatest thing that I would take from like San Diego is my time at Whisk and Ladle, where I had only 6 line cooks, and I think 3 of them are now executive chefs, and 3 of them are like either sous chef or chef de cuisine. And that's a great feeling. You may not be the only reason that they're on that level now, but at least part of it, because you managed them for like a little over a year. I know there's some cooks that almost gave up on cooking entirely, and then you just talk to them and, get to know them and figure out what they want. It's a compromise. Working in the kitchen is nothing but compromise because so many characters and so many personalities in the kitchen. And sometimes it's hard to work with certain people. Sometimes it's just peeling them like onions. Same with me. I've been cooking forever. Like I said, I was born into the business, and I still have a lot of growing to do, and I still learn from other people. And I will never claim I'm perfect, and I'll never claim that, I'm the nicest guy in the kitchen. But sometimes I believe in being firm and being strict. And sometimes people will take it. Some people will follow you at the end of the world. I have cooks until now. Like, this is probably like my 5th or 6th kitchen in San Diego. I still have some of my cooks from the very first kitchen still applying to be my cook at the new spot, and sometimes you rub off the wrong way, and sometimes they know where you're coming from, and you're just trying to teach them, and it's life.
It's evolution.
So, of your proteges or the people you have mentored in your 6 years here, where should our listeners eat, and what dishes should they get at your proteges restaurants?
I think Andrew Reyes at Title is doing great things with island cuisine. He's Filipino and he grew up in Guam, and he's delivering really, really good. We set the scene together. He was my chef de cuisine when I was at Title, and we were doing Filipino food, and it was so easy to kind of move into the island cuisine after that. And he's doing awesome stuff. Sean Brining, he's a sous chef there at Title with Andrew Reyes. He followed me from Jersey all the way here. Joanne from Prep Kitchen Little Italy is doing awesome things. Jordan at Prep Kitchen Del Mar. Dusty, who's the executive chef at Catania. So a lot of those people are like doing great things.
In San Diego, some of our best chefs are Filipino, right?
Yeah,
I mean, let's shout out, because it's October, and October is Filipino American Month.
Mm-hmm.
We have Philip Esteban, who's kind of the R&D chef over at the Consortium Holdings. We have Evan Cruz at Artera. We have Cristiana Sabala over at Nomad.
Craig
Jimenez.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tara from Tender Greens. Yeah.
One thing that people don't realize is how important Craig is to the whole dining scene.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
he's OG.
Yeah,
Craig is OG, man.
He started over at the Guild with Paul Basil, and Paul Basil, he was under Melissa Mayer, who was over at the Guild. But those guys kind of exploded. Craig took over the neighborhood,
Craft and Commerce.
And then went over to Craft and Commerce. So you could say that he helped start Consortium Holdings, right? Why are we not getting as much love? Or how do we get more Filipinos in the kitchens and on people's radars in town, What do we do as Filipinos to support these guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I did when I went to Anthony Sensei's dinner. It's supporting with your dollars. It's... we're all living in, a lot of, at least cooks, living in a cook's wage, and some are fortunate than others. But this is something I learned from Luke up in Cyclops Farm. I did a dinner with Miguel Valdez for the Red Door, and it was one of those farm-to-table dinners. And Luke had the chance to talk to the diners, and he said it's awesome to be featured in magazine and, to be tagged on every Instagram post, but supporting with your dollars, But same thing with Filipino chefs. If there's Filipino chefs out there cooking their hearts out, go out there and eat at their restaurant,
I'm going to shout out some more Filipinos here. We have Mike Arquines over at the Lab Dining and Mostra Coffee.
Yep.
We have Johnny Bautista over at George's.
Yep.
We have now gone to Sacramento, and a big loss was Derek Alanosa, who did Abnormal. So Filipinos, more than, people don't realize the influence and how much we have helped grow this culture and this industry in San Diego. And I just wanted to shout out to all these guys that are grinding out there, and thank you for bringing Filipinos to the forefront.
Definitely. I mean, I've learned from them, and I've always, every time they call and they're like, want to do a collab, I'm like, yes, no doubt, and same thing, when we open Beaver Whack, we're always going to be closed Mondays, and we're closing Mondays because we're going to focus on pop-ups and special events, and we have a lot of great ideas. One of the things that I wanted to do is called Spotlight, and it's collaborating with cooks and sous chefs and chef de cuisines that hasn't done collaboration dinners yet. And I know that one of the things that I was thinking is making sure that I sponsor their food, because that's one of the things that, when you invite a chef, it's like, are you going to pay for my food costs, or I'm going to bring my own food? And, that was one of my ideas, is putting line cooks and sous chefs on the spotlight. That's why I'm calling it Spotlight Supper Club. And
when do you suppose you're going to launch this?
Probably give us a couple months after we open. But we're definitely going to close Mondays. We have a lot of ideas to do for different events. But that's one of the things that I really want to do, is when we do those spotlights dinners, that I'm focusing on line cooks and sous chefs and giving them a chance for the spotlight. Because sometimes it becomes redundant when it's like the same chefs over and over, and you're like trying to support other things, and you're like, I just went to your dinner last week, and it's like, can't go to the next one. So that's one of the ideas I have, because when I was a line cook and I see all these big chefs collaborating, I was like, man, I wish I can be there, and some of them are, super talented that just needs time to shine. They just need a platform to do their food, and hopefully, we get to know all these up and comers.
When your last two jobs, Decoy and now Beaver Whack, they have something in common, that they were from the ground up, but one had a lot of financial backing, and the other one is kind of bootstrap.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I think it's just, it probably not has to do with like financial. It's just the idea and the proper research. I think, like I said, like Decoy, great. It was not a lot of people talk about it. It's probably costed more than Born and Raised to put up Decoy, because that was a big news when they did that article, and it says like 6.5 mil to open up Born and Raised. I think ours was like way more than that, but I didn't know. But I know, like, when you go there and look at it, like, it's like a stunning restaurant. It looks great. It's sitting by the water. And just not enough research, I think. Like, when they thought that fine dining would work up in San Marcos to attract rich people around the area, and they're rich for a reason. They're not going to go out and eat 3 to 4 times a week. That we should have.
Is it still open?
I believe so. Yeah, I haven't been there in a while.
Do you know who's cooking there?
No. But I have a couple cooks from Decoy that's going to be joining me at Beaver Whack. It's just so far, like I said, like their market is not ready for that type of, not cuisine, but like whatever they're doing out there, whatever their idea was, it just wasn't time. But Beaver Whack, I mean, cider, untapped market, little Filipino influence, upscale tavern food, great location. It's easily accessible to everyone in San Diego. Like, when you're going on a night out with a baby, with a babysitter at your house, you're not going to go up to San Marcos and drive an hour plus and then come back down,
Right.
So I think location definitely has something to do with it, and just the main concept, It was a great concept to start, but then once you realize that no one is coming, that puts pressure on everyone else, and pressure sometimes can make or break everybody.
Totally. How are you going to approach cider dinners? How we have beer dinners.
Yes.
How are you going to approach cider dinners?
Well, I mean, it's just knowledge of the product. Like when we were developing the menu, you're like, all right, you're scratching your head because you're like, okay, what pairs well with cider? Because it's an untapped, market, and you're like, no one has done cider dinners. And once you learn, like, okay, it's kind of built like wine, and it's kind of built like beer. And then the idea starts flowing because the background of the cider, and what the flavor profile. So the more cider we taste, I think the easier it is to do the flavor combination. When you just think about apples, there's a million things that can go well with apples. And then you hit it with one of the most common ingredients, which is pork. Apple pork, you can throw 10 dinners out of apple pork. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, like, oh, apple is gluten-free. You're like, dude, gluten-free dinners, done. When you attract gluten-free people, oh, vegetarian, only vegan-based dinners, and then you're on the right track. So right now, when I looked over the menu that we're ready to launch, it's about 75% gluten-free, the menu, and 50% vegan-vegetarian. When
you, our producer over there, Danielle, is like pricking up her ears because she's a vegan.
Yeah.
What are the challenges of introducing cider to this community and then bringing your food along with it? What comes first, people liking the cider or people liking your food?
I think the cider is the biggest thing because it's the brand that we're building. It's people can get food everywhere else. There's so many great restaurants in San Diego, but cider is what we're hoping going to draw the people in. And when they pair it with food, it's understanding how well cider pairs with food, I think, is the biggest thing. A lot of people, they make wines because it's a great beverage to go with food, and that's the boom of, beer. It's because, all these beer dinners and people are collaborating, and, San Diego has, great beer scene. Same thing with cider. I think if people learn how to pair well with cider with the food, and that's what we're hoping that we're going to achieve, is when they eat our food with the cider that we're doing is what's going to make them keep coming back for more.
Let's look forward.
Yeah.
This takes off,
Mm-hmm.
and you're, growing this thing, and your next step. What do you want to do next?
Well, we definitely, for us, like with this, branding in mind,
Personally,
yeah. I mean, second location would be great. I mean, I have had the taste of running multiple properties when I was the corporate chef of Eat, Drink, and Sleep. And that's for me is like the next challenge is like, it's great that you can run a restaurant. Now try running 9, or just more than one, And the ultimate goal, obviously for a lot of chefs is running their own thing, no matter how big or small it is. But reality is it takes so much money to open up your own thing. And even if you think it's small, it's going to pile up.
it's still $500,000.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, no matter, it comes down to financials. If someone's listening out there and want to throw $500K at me, dude, I'll open you a restaurant. But like down the road, I think like for me, it's still going back to the roots of if I can run a little 20-seater Filipino influenced food, I'd love to do that,
Here or back in Jersey?
Could be in the Philippines, could be in the Philippines. I think to be able to run, I was talking to a chef friend of mine who's really thinking about going back to the Philippines and giving him advice because he's very young and he's willing to take the risk of going there. He was born in in Jersey, and he's embracing Filipino cuisine. He's Filipino born in Jersey, and like to be able to run, think about it, it's just like, daydreaming of running San Pellegrino, best restaurant in the world, which is a Philippine restaurant in Philippines. I think that's like ultimate dream come true.
Yeah, and plus there's abject poverty in the Philippines, but at the same time, there's a lot of rich people in the Philippines. Makati is an incredibly rich.
Plus, I was born and raised in the Philippines, so I think deep inside, someday, somehow, even if I'm like 50 or 60, like to go back home, if I can go back and forth, like that's still going to be like an ultimate goal,
Let's talk about your article in Pacific Magazine.
Yeah.
Talk about that. You're dressed up as a character in
Game of Thrones. Yeah. We were playing. So when I was talking to the photographer, he was like, they already know what the article was going to be about. It's Chain of Gourmand. It's their, once a year food related articles in Pacific Magazine. He was like, I can take a simple chef portfolio or let's do something else.
Let's have fun.
Yeah, let's have fun with it. And because the schedule-wise, I wasn't the first one who takes picture, and it was like Anthony Sensei, and he came up with the idea, and it's so hilarious, and I was like, I gotta one-up this guy.
Who is he?
Anthony Sensei.
No, did he dress up as
someone? Oh, no, he did like American Beauty.
Okay.
Kind of inspired thing, and then I saw...
With the roses?
With vegetables.
Oh.
So it was hilarious, and then I saw Davins, I saw Andrew Bacalier from Campfire, and I saw Brad Weiss's picture. And then I ended up like being the first on the chain and then being the last one to get a photograph because of schedule-wise. And I was like, okay. So I went back with the team and they were like, oh, we're going to do something with apples. I'm like, for sure. But like, what should we do? And they're like, oh, Johnny Appleseed, like the story. I was like, I don't even know what the story of Johnny Appleseed is.
A Filipino.
Yeah. I
don't know American folklore.
But I was like, I love Game of Thrones though. Like I watched that religiously. And we were like, how do we kind of tie that into apples? And we were like, ooh, cider is coming. It was like, cider is coming. And then we started playing with the ideas of dressing up like Game of Thrones and having the apple there as, and my owner has a snake, or she has a snake at her house. And we did a photo shoot at her dungeon. She has a basement, we call it the dungeon. And the photos came out super cool. Like,
yeah, I saw
super animated. And I prepared the dish that I had there, which actually won as a runner-up for Chef's Roll plating competition, which is like the honey inspired dish. So I did a honey inspired dish for the Chef's Roll, and I ended up showcasing that for the photo shoot. So it's a win-win.
Man, you just mentioned one of my favorite people that I just recently met, Brad Wise, over at Trust and 100 Proof.
Yeah.
How well do you know Brad?
So Brad is from Jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
He's from Cayman, New Jersey, where I spent like 7 years, and he went to the same school as I did in Jersey, and he worked at Jordan as a sous chef, and he worked as corporate chef of Eat, Drink, and Sleep. So we had a lot of things to kind of in common, and ever since he launched Trust, man, he's taking, he's probably one of the, between him and Davin White is like, the forefronts of like pushing, San Diego to the culinary world, and, seeing his food all the time, it's what pushes me. Seeing everybody's food is it's what, every chef does. You see other people's stuff and you push yourself to make a better one. It's helping everybody. Like competition and, is also inspiration.
I love Wrench and Rodin. I've been there just a few times because it is pretty far up.
Yeah.
But I've never actually eaten anything off that menu.
No, me too.
It's one of the few places where I unconditionally trust what that man is going to put on my plate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, between him and got to give a shout out to Willie. Every event that Davin's doing, you'll see Willie's there. A lot of people still hasn't given him.
One thought. Have you tried his Penang curry?
No, not yet.
Next time you're at 608, try that Penang curry.
I've never eaten at 608, but I've had his food at a lot of events.
Yeah.
Every time me and him does an event together, like I always taste his food. And obviously Campfire's up there and a newcomer called DiBiase.
I just saw
we
that.
ate there when we were up north doing like a staycation at Carlsbad, and dude, Balinese food, come on, like that's awesome to see like another one, like another restaurant that's doing their thing up there. It's gonna be awesome. So I feel bad now because I've eaten at DiBiase and not at 608. Sorry, Willie.
Willie's, I recently was there like less than a month ago, and
Okay.
it was my first time, and I think Willie is just, him and David use so many things that people throw away.
Yeah.
And it's truly like they're trying to push that sustainability, not just as a catchphrase, but as, when you're eating banana peel and you're, eating these things like carrot tops that they've pickled, and everything that you see is being utilized in so many different ways and creative ways. I don't know how these guys are, why they're not here in San Diego, because ultimately Oceanside is like so far.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's $45 and an Uber, guys.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, dude, I wouldn't be. I mean, it could be a great thing, like I've watched San Diego, and it's always being ignored when it comes to like James Beard nomination and stuff like that. I think we'll be due in a few years. I think with all those people, I mean, like I said, like Brad Wise, David, Willie, and everybody else that's like doing their thing. I think it's sooner or later. I think we'll get that recognition. I have a friend that I cooked with at 10 Arts at the Ritz-Carlton. He moved to Washington, D.C., and he's one of my groomsmen. He was like 26 years old, and he got his first Michelin star in Washington. And Washington never had those kind of ratings before.
Washington State or DC?
DC.
Okay.
DC. And DC's food has been up there for a very long time, and it took them a long time to get recognized. And I think like it may not happen during our prime here in San Diego, but like the next generation. So I think educating young cooks and giving them a chance and giving them platforms to keep pushing forward, I think that's what ultimately our jobs is. Like the chefs that are now being highlighted, and if our job is to keep pushing young cooks and get them to the point where they're better than us, I think that's when we're going to get those recognition in a national level.
What is the time frame for that? You say it's not in our...
Maybe. I'm saying it may not be, but I think like with the noise that we just got to make it louder. Whatever we're doing, maybe it's not loud enough for the rest of the nation to kind of catch up with, because you'll see like people would do like rankings of like best food town, and we're not. I don't think we're even
like 18th.
Exactly. You know what I mean? But 18 is better than 20, better than top 30. But if we keep making noises, like keep building restaurants that are focused on the good things and not just money making restaurants. I mean, obviously you need a balance. Otherwise, the restaurant will close without proper financial management. I think it's just timing.
Can I just say that one of the reasons where San Diego gets a lot of flack is that we're a copycat city. I think part of the reason why San Diego doesn't get a lot of love is for the longest time we weren't supporting original ideas. Mm-hmm. We weren't supporting, a guy like David or a guy like Brad. 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, but like Nick Brune, who's a real good friend of mine. He does Eco Caters now, but he had a place called Local Habit. Like, these guys were pushing things, and they never, their originality was never super supported in San Diego. And when you talked earlier about how San Diego needs to focus on, voting with their dollars, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, Local Habit's closed now, but that was something that was totally unique. Cali Creole,
Yeah.
And Nick Brune is one of the most inventive and chaotic in the kitchen, and he's, because all this wisdom and technique and processes in his head, and sometimes that doesn't translate well when you're trying to direct people.
Exactly.
But, kind of a tangent. Let's...
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's another one that I felt like, I don't know if it's ahead of its time or it just didn't work, was like Ocean Pacific Grill. For me, like, when I ate there and I was like, this is cool. Like, someone's doing like 100% Filipino, and it closed down. And I was like, and it was kind of...
That's kind of a jinx location, though. So that was a place that it was a caviar champagne bar before that.
Yes, I remember when it was that.
Yeah, and then it became Ocean Pacific.
Yeah.
And I used to actually live across the street, and that was a place called like LA Rack for 10 years.
Okay.
And all of a sudden it became a restaurant, and all my neighbors were like, oh, what the, what's going to go on in there? And, some of these ideas might have been before their time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like Ocean Pacific Grill was doing this, their modern take on Filipino, and it wasn't until like last year when everyone's saying like, oh, it's Philippine cuisine is the next big thing. Like, if all those people, said that while Ocean Pacific Grill was open, it could have made a difference.
It could have been the thing, not the next big thing.
Because it was one of the first ones, and they're probably the only one that did modern Filipino food like on that level, and when I was looking at his menu, I went there for like adobo throwdown or something, and he had a dinuguan ravioli, and I was like, dude, that's genius, like, because people like who knows dinuguan, it's like chocolate milk, and like presenting that to people might be like a little off with it, and he put it in a ravioli, and I was like, that's really genius. You kind of hide it, but not really hide it, like, so like for me, like that's what I'm saying. I felt bad when it closed because I wanted it to be the thing.
I think we all did as Filipinos.
Yeah.
We wanted to see a restaurant like that succeed because it says a lot about our own culture and our own food and where we can take it. And, I see these things. I see like I think the first time I ever ate at Craft and Commerce, there were familiar things that Craig was using that, whether it was banana sauce or things like this, banana ketchup in his in some of his dishes, and it was great to see like it starting to bubble up even back in 2007 or something, and 10 years later, here we are, talking two Filipino dudes talking about Filipino cuisine, so we have come a long way, but there's so much more to go, and this kind of mirrors both Filipino food but also San Diego. Like 10 years ago, there was starting a movement of food. And here we are, fast forward 10 years, and, there are some good restaurants that are getting national publicity. Some of our chefs are winning contests and, awards. But at some point, the potential has to be where, as a city, we step away or we step up from being the potentially next great city to being a great city. And, we're sitting here at Specialty Produce, recording in their studio, and it's places like this that are putting San Diego on the map. Catalina Offshore, Pacific Shellfish, Dockside. Our purveyors are so important to where our growth as a city is, because we have so many great farms, organic farms. We have so many great, fishermen out here. And I hope that people start realizing that part of the thing that makes San Diego special is the product, and then also passing that product off to people who respect the product and the ingredients.
Yeah, I mean, like, shout out to all those places. They're without them, like we wouldn't have a platform, and continually just grinding, it's the grit. There was a thing that came out like, why is Oceanside so different than everything else? And, Jessica, she said it's just the grit. And I think the rest
Jessica Waite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She said it's just the grit of Oceanside. That's why it's being one of those food towns, and I think like that needs to happen like in San Diego. Everybody should just keep grinding and have that grit, and sometimes they'll have dishes that will work, sometimes don't, but there's really no time to just sit around and do nothing. It's just let's all keep moving forward, support each other. It's very expensive to support each other, but
David and Jessica own the Wet Noodle in Oceanside, which is sister restaurants and next door to the Wrench and Rodent. And ultimately, it's probably in my top 5 restaurants in San Diego,
sure.
if not top
for
3.
Sure. Yeah,
and it's a combination of great food and great technique, but more than anything, it's like the affordability of it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I know a lot of people think and believe, and rightfully so, that Ota or Hane are 2 of the best sushi restaurants in San Diego. But in my humble opinion, I look at a place like Wrench and Rodent and I'm like, man, this goes beyond sushi.
Exactly. Way beyond sushi, way beyond farm to table, way beyond, just a restaurant. It's one of those places that are special in a lot of people's mind because of what they do outside of the restaurant. Being part of, he never says no. That's his, good thing and bad thing. Yeah. He never says no. Like you tell him to help you with an event, he's there, and he's such an awesome person to be around, both of them. So, and I'm so honored to be able to have done so many events with them together.
One of the things that I see more and more, my favorite restaurants are owner-owned, or chef-owned, sorry. Mm-hmm. You have like Brad, he owns,
exactly.
Is a partner at Trust. You have David, you have
Matt Gordon.
I mean, I think they're celebrating 10 years this year.
Whiskey and Ladle too, it's 10 years.
Yeah. So all these restaurants where the chef is the driving force, as well as being the financial force of a restaurant at the, Hannes, you mentioned Hannes. I mean, he's another guy. And so how important is it, and why is it important to be an owner chef?
Well, I think it's meeting. It's like you said, like with Dev and Jessica, it's like ownership. And if you're partnering with a chef, it has to be like almost like a perfect marriage. It's a compromise, because a lot of owners, are business driven, and a lot of chefs are food driven. And sometimes if they're not matched for each other, it's never going to work, because one thing is thinking circle, the other one's thinking square. It's never going to work. But if you meet those people or group of people that believes of the abilities of the chef, and the chefs also needs to compromise. In the last 6 months, I've seen a lot of chef shuffle in San Diego. Some of them are more publicized than other, but sometimes it's on the chef too to compromise. Like if the owners want something in return of you having some culinary freedom, then you got to meet them in the middle. It's not a one-sided thing. It's like me and my wife's been together for 12 years, married for 6, and I'm not an easy person to get along with, and sometimes she's not an easy person to get along with. But it's we have a lot of common denominators, and it's compromising in the middle. I've seen so many chef and ownership duke it out, and sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes pride and proving that you're right is the downfall of a lot of great men. And I've learned that, in the last 6 years in San Diego, and it's tough sometimes. But sometimes you just have to meet them in the middle. And that's where everyone, should think.
So on that note, where do we follow you? What social media links? What's your address at Beaver Whack? And tell us more about how we can keep up with you.
Yeah, so Beaver Whack, follow Beaver Whack Ciderworks on Instagram. I'm DJ_Tangalin on Instagram. I usually use Facebook for family things, but usually food pics and food events I do on Instagram. I keep my Facebook more like family oriented, because I have like pictures of my kids in there. And
DJ, thank you very much for sitting in.
Pleasure to be here.
And I hope this podcast was not as boring as some of the other ones. No, I'm just kidding.
We've done a couple of good ones, so I think people are going to enjoy it and learn more about, not just San Diego food scene, Filipino food scene, and just life in general. I mean, that's what we're trying to do is just, if it's something that's like in your mind, just speak it out,
Thank you, DJ.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll look forward to your opening.
Yeah. Soon, but not soon enough, but it's great.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers, then.
If you want to continue the conversation, be sure to check the EDSD group on Facebook and head to pacificsandiego.com for updates on restaurant openings, new menus, chef profiles, and food-forward events. Hey, San Diego, I'm Leslie Hackett, Editor-in-Chief at Pacific Magazine. If it's the second Monday of the month, then it's time to celebrate those San Diego restaurants and food businesses that keep your plate full year after year. Those celebrating recent anniversaries include Kettner Exchange, which turned 3, The Lot in La Jolla marks 4 years, and, most notably, City Farmers Nursery, which boasts the motto, "A little bit of the country in the heart of the city turns 45. Help City Farms celebrate on Sunday, November 19th at Nate's Garden Grill. For more information, visit cityfarmersnursery.com. If you know of a food-related business celebrating an anniversary or other milestone, let us know. Send emails to leslie@pacificsandiego.com. And now, a roundup of food events to watch out for in San Diego between now and the first week of December. Enjoy some of San Diego's finest during the 6th Annual Fish Taco TKO at the San Diego Bay Food and Wine Festival on Tuesday, November 14th at the Broadway Pier. Tickets and information at sandiegowineclassic.com. Sit down with Pacific featured chef Steve Brown, the self-dubbed King of Wagyu in San Diego, as he and his team prepare a multi-course dinner on Friday, November 17th at Olivewood Gardens and Learning Center in Chula Vista. Tickets and information at sandiegowineclassic.com. Do-gooder alert! Cafe Gratitude is hosting its 2nd annual free community Thanksgiving organic plant-based meal on Thursday, November 23rd. Give back by volunteering, by yourself or with family and friends, to help prepare and serve the meal, or help fund the event by purchasing one of the Little Italy restaurant's raw, organic, plant-based Thanksgiving pies. Pumpkin, pecan, and chocolate coconut cream are all available for $35. Head south of the border for a celebrity chef-prepared Thanksgiving meal from Javier Plasencia. Club Tango Hombre, the roving supper club, takes guests to Finco Altozano in Valle de Guadalupe on Saturday, November 25th, for this unique dining adventure. Transportation from the U.S. side of the border is available. Tickets and information at clubtangohombre.com. Island Food and Beer Fest at Waterfront Park takes place on Saturday, December 2nd. Tickets are $50 plus fees and are available at eventbrite.com. If there's a food event worth filling San Diegans' calendars, let me know. Drop an email to leslie@pacificsandiego.com. And be sure to check out pacificsandiego.com online for more cool events to keep you busy all year long. Thank you for listening to Dish It Up, a collaboration between Pacific Magazine and Facebook group Eating and Drinking San Diego. Craving more? Be sure to sign up for this podcast and our Drink Forward podcast, Kiss My Glass, which hits airwaves on the 4th Monday of the month.